I can't believe it's officially week 6 already, even though we started classes, on September 2. So being October 6th, it's just over a month. Um, so it's a weird feeling. We've really only been in classes for about a month. But while we talk about calendar, I wanted to save the date. I wanted to announce a save the date. You will receive this Eventbrite later today for registration, but there is a guest presentation coming for the Lemonade series. But it was actually intended just for our class, and it has opened up for other students. So if you are available, and I really hope you are, save the date on October 16. It's a Friday, next Friday, from 11 to 12. We will be having a guest presentation by a historian from Michigan State who studies germ theory and the built environment. And she will be giving a presentation called Germs and Design, Using the Past to Guide Our Future. So she will be talking about all of the different ways throughout history that disease and germs and virus, and everything, illness, has shaped the built environment and how we've responded to it in various ways. And not, just in interior design and architecture, but also in our lifestyles, the way, in fashion. And so it's a full review of basically how the societal culture has responded to virus over time. And there's some really interesting facts, and she is positioning this presentation to really set us up to discuss about what our future will look like. So we are going through a really interesting time in history right now. Hopefully it's rare. It doesn't, happen again for a long time at least. It has been rare throughout history. The last time we had a pandemic like this was about 100 years ago. And so, what lessons could we learn from the past to inform our future so that we can be proactive in addressing our designs and planning for the future, instead of only being reactive to things that happen? And so this is a really applicable lecture to design history, in a really interesting way. So I'm hoping that everybody is able to um, save the day or clear their calendar for this time period. It will be recorded, and there will be a question handout to go with it. So if you absolutely cannot make it, you can watch the recording and do the discussion questions at a different time. So I wanted to make that announcement. Look in your emails later, and you will have an opportunity to register. Right. It will, the registration is going to be very similar to the virtual salon in that it's going to happen through Zoom, and the Zoom link will be released to only those who register the morning of the event. And this is for security purposes for a variety of reasons. And working through Eventbrite also ensures a level of security and organization. So, moving on, I wanted to also review your next assignment. I'm going to make it a little smaller here. So, this PDF, as you watch this, you will also have the PDF in your e-learning, and it is due at the end of the semester. So it's a semester project, and I think that it will be really fun for you guys. So I'm going to read through the assignment and then talk about it on the way. So in our personal stories, we were able to connect memorable events in our lives, no matter how big or small, to the environments that we were in. Specific views, smells, feelings on our skin, tastes, emotions, among many other things. Our stories made the backdrops come alive, and in many cases, the environment of the story had a life of its own. The built environment is a canvas to the art of human life. We know that as designers, our decisions help shape environments and therefore the routines of the people that use them. And those routines add up to be an entire lifetime. That's a lot of power, especially when most people do not even realize the extent that their environment is forming and influencing them, including but not limited to identity, culture, politics, religion, rituals, traditions, and even the memories that we pass on to the next generation as stories. And those memories from previous generations that we now call history. So, are you still with me? Design and history are complicated beasts. They can be inspiring and scandalous and criminal, humorous, sexy, biased, and defining. Really, all the elements and characteristics that reflect the nature and priorities of humanity throughout time. So here's the description of the assignment. This assignment challenges you to tell a unique, informative, and interesting story about the historic life of a design-related item from the list below. Each student has been randomly assigned a topic from the list. However, you may trade with other classmates as you'd like. You will research your topic and gather images. Allow interesting facts you uncover to guide the areas where you'd like to focus your research. As a class, we will be creating a published book. Yes, published, an official published book. Each of you will take ownership of your own chapter dedicated to telling a story you uncover about your topic. As this will be a formal publication, there will be graphic templates provided to each of you in InDesign. The templates will accommodate a healthy mix of body text, graphics, and feature text. So do not think of this as a boring piece of literature or a textbook. Your story is meant to bring the history to life alongside mouth-watering images for readers' delight. So you'll be telling stories that people want to learn more about, that people are really interested about, or that are things that they had never considered. So it's just like something totally new they're learning about. And you will get to decide the perspective and the details that you focus on related to your topic. So here are the deliverables. So number 1, you will produce 4 8x10 spreads, which is 8 pages total, but also 4 spreads if you're thinking about it as the pages side by side. Again, you will be given the InDesign templates for these spreads. And in the story, you're going to want to focus on the origin story of your focus area. You're also going to want to discuss an aspect of evolution over time. So what is the story from its origin to now? You also want to cover social, cultural, political impacts, and technological context relevant to the topic. So vernacular, essentially. You will have a minimum of 6 images with relevant captions and figures. You will also have a minimum of 4 scholarly peer-reviewed resources, properly cited, and we will go over those at the time that you are putting this together. They do need to be properly cited since this will be a published book. And then you will also design a cover page for your chapter with an exciting title, subtitle, and images. So let's talk about getting started. This entire project will be due on December 18, which is the last day of the semester. So you will have time to enjoy the process of research and the creation of a story angle. Use the first 1 to 2 weeks, which is now and next week, to immerse yourself in readings, videos, podcasts, whatever you can drum up about your topic. Below is an overview of the origin story concept, as the origin story will have a significant impact on your overall project. So, origin stories. Superhero blockbusters are overwhelmingly popular right now because they bring us on an adventure where we can learn about the origin of our favorite heroes. Many people are emotionally connected to superheroes because of childhood memories of reading comic books or movies or having action figures. But they also bring inspiration and hope. So they have a really meaning in our hearts. And in many cases, the superheroes are relatable under their cloak. So, design history is your new superhero. Your topic also has an origin story, like any superhero. And so, just like superhero flicks, the telling and retelling of the stories may change slightly as they focus on different perspectives. So, there's various movies that cover, like, Batman's childhood story. And while the premise is generally the same, I don't think I need to worry about spoilers. His parents get murdered. But it presents the story from a different perspective in each movie. And so you learn and you build the story, and whoever is directing the movie really gets to bring to life a new part of that story. And so after you wrap your head around the topic with your initial research, you will find that you are interested in certain areas over others. So focus on those areas. Allow your interest to guide you. You might discover the origin of that focus area within the context of your topic. So I know that sentence is a lot to take in. So I have a very convenient example. The other week, I was talking to Jocelyn about her museum project, and it actually has a connection to this project as well. So her topic was Murano glass. And Jocelyn, I'm sorry if I'm getting this a little wrong, but for the sake of this example, let's go with what I have. So the topic that she was assigned was Murano glass. As she researched, she found information about Chihuly, an artist that works with glass. And so she found some interesting information about the relationship between Chihuly and Murano glass. And that story that she told me is not one that is commonly heard or told. Chihuly interrupted the Murano glass scene, and Murano glass then took on an origin story specific to Chihuly. So he interrupted that part of the culture and what they were doing, and their story changed. Granted, somebody might be telling a story about Murano glass from a totally different perspective, but it's still about Murano glass. So if Jocelyn did not decide to go with Chihuly as a concept or a theme, she might have found another topic to pursue, like the Murano Italian Empire. So there are examples of origin stories specific to the focus areas of your liking. So Jocelyn was attracted to the concept of Chihuly, who has his own origin story with Murano glass. But there are other origin stories related to Murano glass. I hope that makes sense. And we will talk about this in terms of your topic as well. So here is the timeline for everything. On 10/5, I wrote this yesterday, is the project introduction. So check that off your list. 10/16, which is next Friday, your story angle proposals will be due. So this is essentially a Word document submitted to Dropbox that just goes over what stories are you interested in telling? What interesting things did you find out about your assigned topic? And, what angles do you think that you can tell a story from? And so you can throw out multiple ones, and this will be our way of reviewing them together, going back and talking to one another through this Word document. And then on October 30, your story outline and thumbnail design is due. So the story outline is essentially taking the angle that you ultimately decided on and expanding it and to have, an introduction, a body, an end, all of the elements that create a story. And then the thumbnail design is essentially, I will give you guys a template, but it is essentially your initial creative ideas for how you'd like to lay out your story on the page. So, for instance, the first thumbnail would be the cover page. And then you might see the first spread being text on one side, and then on the other page, a full bleed image. So think about it as you look through books and look at different graphics. Pay attention to what sticks out to you. The template will guide a little bit, but it's mostly put into place to account for page numbers and general organization of the book, so that even though everybody's creating their own chapter, there is some cohesion going through. But the creative decisions are ultimately up to you. And so that is just the thumbnail design. It doesn't have to be the actual design, it's just your thoughts. And so by November 20, the rough draft manuscript is due. So November 20 is the last day of classes, in-person classes for the semester. And so being able to submit the rough draft, it's right before Thanksgiving. So you'll do that before Thanksgiving and get that off your plate. And then you will promptly get feedback and edits, and then your rough draft of your full spreads will be due December 4. And so what that is taking the manuscript writing, and the manuscript is just the text. So you will take the manuscript, and then you will start to integrate the images that you want to include, and in InDesign, lay it out as a rough draft, but lay it out. And then you will get feedback on that. Perhaps we'll meet virtually as a class and review some of these rough drafts so we can get feedback from other students. And then on December 18, everything is due, including, your spreads, and then a figures list and a citations. So the figures list and citations will not be like you would in a normal paper where you put them at the end. Sorry. You will, let me drink a sip of water. I've been recording so many lectures. You will essentially be turning in your InDesign pages, just the raw InDesign file, and then you will turn in a Word document with your figures and citations. And so our book will have a figures list and a citations at the end of all of the chapters. And so once I'm able to have everybody's figures list, then I can properly arrange them in the order that they appear in the book, in addition to citations, which will appear in the order as well. So I will compile the spreads. You'll provide me the InDesign files, and I will compile the spreads, and I will be submitting the book to Blurb for finishing. Blurb is an online publisher. It produces many different types of publications. We will be going with a physical book, which also provides a formal ebook as well. And those will be made available to purchase through Blurb. And you can also purchase them on Amazon. So you could type your name in Amazon and this book will come up and people can buy it. Not just, us, like actual people can buy it. The book will receive a formal ISBN code and it will be searchable in databases as soon as it is published. So chances are when you Google your name after this is published, this book will also come up on the various websites where it can be purchased. Extra credit opportunity. Okay, so this book will require cover designs. The book will need a front and a back cover. So those who submit cover designs, which is a cohesive designed pair, a front and a back that, matches or is, meant to go together, will receive up to 10 points extra credit. So anybody that submits designs. All of the entries will need to be submitted by December 4, which is when the rough draft full spreads are due. And they will be posted so the class can vote for the winning cover design. All right. So here's the topic list. Okay. So since I wrote the instructions at the top, I had a change of heart. So I was going to randomly assign everyone a topic and allow you to trade, purely for the purposes of here's your topic, go for it, instead of you receiving a list and being overwhelmed and not knowing how to choose. However, we do have a surplus of topic choices, and I want to empower you so that you feel like you do have control over the projects you take on academically, personally, and professionally, because you do, and you always will. You can pursue many directions with your career, and you can spend your interior design expertise immersing yourself in your passions throughout your lifetime. That being said, if you do not select a topic by this Friday, I will assign one to you so that the project can keep moving forward on its scheduled pace. This assignment and the list will be made into a Google Doc and shared with the class so that everyone can get in and sign up. And the sign up will work similarly to how we did in design history and theory, where for the psychology presentations where you got in and you wrote your name and read next to your topic of choice. So there are 80 some topics. Yes, that's boob lamps right at the top. Some of them are, there's a lot of different avenues here. If you have something specific that you'd like and it's not included on the list, propose it to me. So there's a lot of items, furniture items, products, industrial items. There's spaces like kitchens or dining rooms. There's details like types of feet, for instance. There's textiles. There's different types of wall coverings. There's lighting. There's a whole host of things. And some of these are directly pulled from the textbook from various chapters, and others are things that, they're going to be stories that aren't necessarily told in the textbooks. So I don't think boob lamps is covered in our design history textbook, but boob lamps does have a significant impact on American culture. And I think everybody has seen a boob lamp. If you've lived in any apartment, it's just the ceiling mounted, opaque glass bulb that sits in the middle of the ceiling, and it has basically an erect nipple right on the center of it. Those are actually legitimately called boob lamps. It's not slang word for it. That's the name of it. Um, they have a really unique history. They have a lot to be told. Just because it's not, something from the Renaissance or, something like this historic nature, it does still have a ton of impact on society. And so another example would be the monoblock chair. We've all sat in these. These are those plastic chairs that are a single plastic formed piece, and they curve at the back a little bit, and they have little arms. You usually see them on people's like decks. Just they're outdoor furniture usually. Um, so if you just Google monoblock chair, you'll get a lot of information about it. And that, just like bentwood, just like how Eames revolutionized furniture in a lot of ways, monoblock chair and the technology of plastics and the culture of plasticity. Think about that. The plastic as the material and plasticity as an adjective. They have a really strong reflection with our society and culture. And then there's things like a peacock throne, which is an ancient type of throne. But then there's a peacock chair, which is the woven chairs that you see on like album covers from the 60s to now. They're really popular in album covers. They frame people's faces a lot when you see them. They're really popular for wedding photos right now. But peacock chairs have a strong history. They're not just, an artifact of the 70s, the 60s, or the 70s. But then there's things like surrealist interiors. And so think about surrealist art. Salvador Dali is one of the most famous surrealist artists and painters. And his work often depicted interiors, and his paintings often influenced interior design. So surrealism as an art movement had a big impact on interiors. And then there's things like priest holes, which were in the UK when society was secular and kind of like Catholicism and Christianity was banned and enforced by the government. Families would still have priests come over and do private ceremonies and still practice their faith in private and in secret. And when necessary, they had priest holes in their houses so that they could hide their priest. So, yeah, that's also an interesting story to go into. And then there's things like the English wigwam, which we will talk about in the, colonial chapters of history. Just a hint, wigwams are not English, but they've been appropriated to be called English wigwams. So there's some controversial history there. All of these topics have political points of view, social, religious. A lot of them are fairly scandalous. They have a lot of movers and shakers throughout history, and not just in a design sense. So there's Queen Victoria's Royal Saloon, which is a fancy railroad car for the Queen to ride in. And there's some interesting stories because trains, they were an evolving transportation technology at the time of Queen Victoria. And a lot of, doctors would warn against riding on trains because it would mess up your head or have all of these physical debilitating side effects, they thought at the time. But she could care less about that, even though her husband wouldn't step on a train to save his life. And then he ended up dying at an early age in a totally different way. But Queen Victoria is a really prominent figure in history. She's related to contemporary culture, specifically a contemporary retailer of clothing. And it's all connected to the impact that she had on textiles and design, and how the revolution, the Industrial Revolution that happened while she was in reign, further allowed for exotic, materials and textiles to be transported and distributed throughout society, and then recreated, and so on and so on. So we will talk about that later when we cover Queen Victoria as well. So there's a lot. I mean, I could just keep going, but really, if you Google, you'll find something, and some of them are a little bit more abstract. So, for example, domestic libraries. So when we think about the history of domestic libraries, you have to think, and we'll get to this through lectures as well, but you have to think about when books became like a thing that common people had, when they really became a thing in general. Even though documentation of history occurred since the classical Roman and Greek times, there was a Renaissance later on, and books, literature, music, science, a lot of things came about and progressed. And so people started having official libraries in their houses, not just bookshelves, but specific libraries. And the same with music rooms. And so if you are interested in libraries, you could talk about the Renaissance of enlightenment and information and what that means for books. Give it a specific perspective. Maybe you want to look into specific characters in history that had famous libraries and tell a story about their life and use the library as the backdrop. Public baths. Public baths are common in many cultures throughout time. So you can essentially you can research public baths and see what sounds the most interesting to you. There's public baths that exist today, actually. There's a really famous one in Detroit. There's one in Grand Rapids. They're not well known, but they are notorious. And when once they served certain populations in a traditional way, like public baths have done, in the Roman times, now they provide a protected environment for certain activities to happen in certain populations. Let's see. So there's just a lot of things. Window taxes. I think this could be an interesting story. During the medieval ages, medieval times basically took over Roman architecture. So the Roman ruins that we think of today have actually been already ruined by medieval architecture. So when we look at medieval architecture, a lot of the times you'll see stones from Romans. But anyway, so Romans loved windows, loved the outside, all of that culture. The medieval found that windows, they had certain beliefs about windows, and you would get taxed for every window that you had on your residence. So because people were living in old Roman buildings, they would block in the windows so that they wouldn't get taxed. So now we have all of these Roman ruins with like blocked in windows with different stones because they're newer stones, or maybe they're rubble from old buildings that people just used. So the occurrence of window taxes, the history behind it, maybe how it played out in certain households, and what it looks like today. I'm sure you might have seen it. I mean, this happened all over Europe. Um, so not just when we think of Roman, but the Roman Empire was all of Europe, basically. Um, and then mushroom symbolism in interiors and interior artifacts. So mushrooms have always had significant symbolism in objects, specifically interior objects. um, we'll throughout lectures in this semester we'll talk about a few specific instances, but I mean, think about mushrooms, decor, pottery, anything like artwork from the 60s and 70s. There's definitely a revival of that aesthetic and type right now. Mushrooms are a really significant symbol in Scandinavian cultures, but they also have important symbolism for Art Nouveau also. So there's mushrooms come up in so many different ways in different cultures in different areas of time. So it's a fascinating rabbit hole. Elevator and escalators, that changed architecture. That was like, you know, architecture existed, and then when elevators and escalators were invented and installed mainstream, architecture was changed forever, and how we used environments were changed forever. So it's a really interesting study, how we perceive space, how we use space, what space looks like, environmental controls on the inside. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. And that kind of coincides with the American shopping mall. They have a lot in common, but they can be completely different. You know, with the American shopping mall, you could talk about, when shopping malls became really popular and why. And we'll talk about it. And in New York City, as New York City was redeveloped to be, more popular and more affluent. Popular urban designers were hired to create urban standards and urban planning. So like what storefronts look like, the merchandising of storefronts, and how people use space, and dedicating certain like districts for shopping, and then designing those districts specifically to appeal to women. Those same designers were pulled to do the exact same thing in areas of the country. And, this happens worldwide. So you could pick shopping mall culture from any culture. But in America, in the northern states where it's colder and it's less popular to do all of your daily chores and shopping by walking. And in New York City, everything's fairly close, it's fairly developed, but when you think of Minnesota, not the case at the time where the first shopping mall was created. So Michigan has a huge shopping mall history. It's actually very notorious for its shopping mall scandals and histories. So there's just so many different avenues. And so don't think of design history as learning about chair styles and lighting fixtures and architectural details. We will do that. We are doing that. And those things are included if that's something you're interested in. But there's a lot of other things as well. Oops, I just noticed this was on here twice. Okay. So I'll just cross that out so we don't get people signing up for two of the same things. Yeah. So Google some of these. One of them, the Supreme Diner, is the name of like the landmark diner typology, the first diner car. So neon signs. You would think that's, more of a modern thing. Maybe it's in Las Vegas. And yeah, you could take that perspective, but neon signs actually have been around for many, many, many years. Like hundreds of years even. The technology of neon signs involves fire. So they're not like a normal electric light bulb. I mean, they more are today, but neon lights and signs were a different technology historically. Anyway, I digress. I just get really excited about this. I don't know if you can tell. So, yeah, I think, after there's 22 of you, and after everybody signs up for a topic, we're going to have a very diverse chunk of topics. And this book is going to be like the ultimate a coffee table book. I hate to say that about history, but really, if we can use history to be sexy on someone's coffee table, why not? I mean, we're interior designers after all. So, but is also this stuff is really good for portfolios as well. Um, Unfortunately, the book will have a price. You'll have a PDF of it for free. You will have documentation of it. If you wanted to buy the book, you can do that, and you can select the quality of the book too. You can select, the type of paper, if you want soft cover, hardcover, of the book. So you can kind of control the price that way. But it's the cost of a book. Kind of fun. So, yes. This is your semester project. You still have a really cool like class activity that will be taking place soon. I'm working on it. I know I've been very vague about it. Let me know if you have any questions. Sign up by Friday for sure, regardless if you have questions about like what all of this is. Just look through the topics and sign up for something that speaks to you, and then we can go from there on how to go about the next step, because then you will have already been moving on this timeline. All right, again, I'm going to do a plug. Germs in Design, October 16, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. next Friday. Register when you get the Eventbrite. It's going to be a fun time. All right. Thank you guys. Bye.